Hello, everybody. We are super excited today. We're going to be talking about looking at data, programmatic thinking, and some really cool stuff. And as always, we have Matt Marcotte from our customer success team here. What's up, Matt? How's it going?
Well, what up? What up? It's going well. It's going well. I'm actually in my shop today. Got a little better background than just the white walls as normal. But yeah, I'm super excited about this one. I mean, today's guest, which I'm gonna talk to you here in a second, Cory. But today's guest is somebody that I've been kind of chatting with. We've been sliding into each other's DMs for a hot minute. Just because everything he's doing, he's always pushing things to improve and do better. And he got me into wanting to read the 2-second lean, which I actually promised him I'd have it finished by today, and I broke a promise. I didn't quite have the time to actually get it finished, okay. But I will be tonight. But yeah, I'm super stoked to dive into something that he posted a couple of weeks back, and it was like, dude, this is awesome. And it really goes to the core point of at least what I know about the book already, the core principles, 2-second lean too. So yeah, without any further ado, I want to introduce our wonderful guest. Super stoked he could join us today. Cory Beal from Floodway Print Co. What up, Cory?
Hello, good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm stoked.
Heck yeah, Cory.
Yeah, man, it's awesome having you.
I don't know if I said this. I'm Nick from Printavo. I'm in the sales team. And one last note for the folks watching, if you have questions during the show, we want to answer them. This is interactive, so pop them in the chat. We're watching the chat. If you have questions for Cory, and I'm sure you will. But let's start with an easy one, Cory. Who's Cory? What is Floodway Prints? Tell us about yourself.
Oh, dang. Yeah, my name's Cory Beal. I started this company like 6 years ago. I ride BMX in my free time, and I was just trying to get shirts done for like supporting the events that we were throwing and stuff like that, just like anybody with a little merch brand. And I was having a super hard time getting it done. And that's kind of what, I always knew about screen printing, but I didn't really know shirts were printed. So when I saw you could do it yourself, and how easy it is to get started, like they say, or they make it look, I've like, yeah, that's literally it. Like, that's the rabbit hole I've been going down for 6 years. I just needed to get some shirts done and saw a hole in the market, in our market. And I'm still seeing that hole and just trying to fill it, right?
Love it, man. That's awesome. So maybe to kick us off with something before we get in the deep end here, we were talking the other day, you were mentioning how programmatic thinking is a skill. Can you tell us more about that? How is programmatic thinking a skill, and how do you use that skill in your shop?
Well, let's start with how it came out. So someone asked me the other day, like, if I had any skills, like asked me if I had any hard skills, like mechanical skills. You know who it was, actually? It's not a name drop. I think it's kind of funny because Matt just mentioned it. It was Paul Akers from 2-Second Lean who asked me that, if I have any like hard skills. And I didn't really have an answer. It was no to his examples, like woodworking or welding or whatever. But he's twice my age. I'm 31. That guy's 62. I spent my I realized after this that, yeah, I spent my teenage years not in wood shops or whatever. I spent it sitting on MSN Messenger and like on the computer, like building websites and linking this stuff together. So that's something that maybe we take for granted as people who are using technology every day, but a lot of people can barely answer an email. So yeah, like, don't discredit those things. And thinking about a process from start to finish is something that took me a while to realize is it's as worth having in your toolbox as like welding or whatever, right? It's just as valid. Right?
Yeah, I mean, you might have somebody that can weld. We were talking the other day too. So my business partner, like, he welded a great thing for our washout booth. I love him. I'm not saying anything that I wouldn't say to his face too. He's not necessarily a programmatic thinker, right? He's not necessarily the guy that's going to be able to say like, hey, let's break down the processes and figure out like, is this the best and most effective way? Like, he's really good at like, just go, right? But you have to sometimes show them those things. So absolutely, I think it's a very important thing. And also, if you're trying to ask yourself like, hey, what skills do you have? And like, if you're coming up with like, okay, if you're looking at those hard skills, okay, welding, woodworking, most people can't do that kind of stuff. But I would argue that somebody who's a programmatic thinker, somebody who's got the ability to break those things down, could probably figure out how to become a welder, how to become a woodworker, right? So I 100% agree with you. Like, looking at yourself and being able to say like, you know what, maybe I did spend my teen years doing those things, like early HTML, like pimping out my MySpace page. Like, you had an early jump on learning a lot of these tech forward and website forward things that also are going to help you with coding and developing and understanding these things. So it already sets you off to a nice programmatic thinking process. So yeah, that's interesting that you ended up in that spot, and I couldn't agree more.
The thing for me was just seeing that that we all have unique experiences, and it's tying those. They're all methods. So one of my favorite quotes ever is that as to methods, there may be a million, but principles are very few. And if you understand those principles, then you can select any of those methods. And we talked about this a little bit with welding. Like, the reason I don't know how to weld is because I've never really needed that method. If I had that method, maybe through a shop class or some other interest that led me to that method, I might be quicker to weld a shelf. But if I could weld that shelf, I probably still wouldn't, which is part of why I can't weld, because I would have got to like a different kind of place with the solution, right? I would have tried something simpler first, or not something that's like an entire trade and skill like screen printing is, right? So methods, man, like if you can select all these methods and be more conscious of like what you're able to do and what your blind spots are, so shout out to everyone taking the time to learn, right? Because a lot of people are really stuck in whatever methods they know already. Like, I know how to write this stuff down on paper, so that's what I'm going to do. And you can do that, but taking it a step further like this, investing your time is wicked. Yeah. So shout out to everybody hanging out.
Absolutely.
Love it.
Let's get into it. Let's get into the real stuff, why we're all here today. So, Cory, you built a really cool app to solve a really specific problem. Can you tell us what you built and what problem you were trying to solve?
Okay, so I guess what I showed a couple of weeks ago, it was a report of our screen inventory and like reclaim records. I guess at the end of the day, what the report shows is what mesh counts we use over time, and we get that by just measuring what's actually reclaimed. So not what we call out in Printavo or whatever, but what we actually use after reclaim. And then like what my fleet actually looks like. We have 100 screens. What percent is it of this, that, and the other thing, right? So that was the big problem that I wanted to, I thought if I could get that info in an easy way, that it'd be valuable to me in a couple different ways. The one we talked about was I switched to eco frames recently. And so I was like, all right, I need to buy all new screen. I'm like starting fresh, all the mesh. I have my freedom, my choice of starting from scratch, right? I'm not biased by like, oh, well, that's a $50 screen. Like, let's use it till it breaks. Like, I could start from scratch, build it out. And I just had no clue what to order. I'm like, okay, we use thin thread and we use 160s and 225s, but like, should I have the same amount of both? I would have probably told you no, because we use 160s for bases and 230s for top colors. But after looking at the report, gathering the data, that's the best thing about it, right? You don't know what you don't know. And so I'm always looking for frictionless ways, because gathering data, no one pays us for that, but try to make it as easy as possible to get the info we actually need, like that we're actually going to use. So what mesh should I buy? And are we breaking lots of screens? And what does reclaim look like? Like, how many are we doing in a day? Like, how often is a person doing it? And like, what does the job look like? You know what I mean?
So real quick, I don't want to interrupt, but we've got people already asking some questions, so I want to
for sure. I see,
yeah. Everybody in there too. Be sure to you can do it in the chat, but ideally if you can click on the questions area and submit them there, that way I can kind of keep track of them a little better. That'll make sure I don't miss them. So one question from Jason Ketchum over here at Printavo is, Cory, do you combine first principles thinking with programmatic thinking?
Okay, so I literally don't know what that is. Which right, so which is fine. So let's look at it together. I just Googled it. I'm just gonna share my screen here, and we can look at it, because
love it.
Yeah, it's like a Wikipedia. I don't know. I'm not gonna dive in, but I'm gonna read the principles of this and try and answer as best I can. Right? It's one of the best ways. Sorry, I just want to make sure you guys can see what's going on. All right, yeah. So it's one of the best ways to reverse engineer complicated problems and unleash creative possibility. I'm interested in that. It's right up my alley. sometimes called reasoning from first principles. The idea is to break down complicated problems into basic elements and then reassemble them from the ground up. It's one of the best ways to learn to think for yourself, unlock the creative potential, and move from linear to non-linear results. Okay, so to answer your question, Jason, like I would say first principles thinking is super tightly linked to lean. Like, because the way I see this is, yeah, breaking down this huge problem into small pieces, and that's really 2-second lean. Like we can look around our shop and find all these massive things, but it really needs to start from literally the ground up. Like the people doing the task need to be into like making the task better, making their job better, starting with the smallest pieces. So when I look at a process, yeah, I try and break it up into the tiniest things. And like, yeah, you can make a problem like this really complicated. Like how much mesh do I use, right? And me and Matt actually talked about measuring tension over time. So you can get into a situation where you're tracking something that might not even be valuable to you personally. So I always start from the ground up with something like this, which is, what am I trying to answer? Because the stuff that I could show is, there's a lot that you could show with this data, and there's a lot you could collect to show even more. But I really try and start from like just the simplest thing, like try and keep it as simple as possible. So
it kind of breaks down to what your quote you had. Yeah, I think it does. The quote you had earlier too about there's lots of methods, but there's only a few principles, right? So I think that your programmatic thinking already has brought you to this first principles methodology where you're really breaking things down. And I'm also someone that, honestly, when I was younger, I wasn't the one that was like the head of the class, clearly, right? But I was able to go, okay, if I don't understand something, it's probably because I'm not getting a smaller part of it. So I would take something more complex and go, okay, I'm gonna ignore this as an overall entity and look at each individual little steps and try to break it down in easier, more palatable information. I've found that I had learning issues that I had to fix myself, and I find a lot of people need to learn from smaller steps and start stacking them up there too. So I think that actually answers that great. Another question before we keep going into this is one that I actually did ask you too, Cory.
Just get it out of the way.
People were going to be asking, what kind of labels are you using to place on the screens, and do they hold up to the dip tank?
Well, it's your lucky day. I've got a link here where you can buy them. I'm just kidding. It's the simplest thing ever. It's just like a label maker. Like I wish I had it on my desk. I was supposed to. I have an Amazon link actually, so you can buy this. It's a referral link. I'll drop it in the chat, but literally just a label maker. Like I'll do the screen share again and pull one up. I'll show you exactly the one that we use, but it doesn't matter, you know, exactly which one we use. The key to these things is that they're heat transfer. They use heat to like burn it into the label, I guess is how it works. Like you never replace ink. Yeah, thermal printing. You never replace an ink cartridge on them. It's like a receipt. Most receipt printers are this way. So they're cheap like borscht, as they say. The one we use the most is something like this guy here. Oh, there's no price on it. Something like this guy here, $40. This is Canadian. So this is probably like $30 American. It works amazing. And the one that I really like, we just recently got it, is more like this guy. I think it's this one specifically because it prints a 1-inch label, a fat one, a nice big visible one that you can see a little better. And this is probably the one we use the most. So you don't need a computer hooked up to it or anything. You just design them right on the thing. So I'll you know what, I have the link for the Amazon store, and I put the label makers that I pre-shopped. They're just the simple best label makers. I kind of put those in. So I will I'll drop that into the chat right now.
Awesome.
You know, I've never talked with somebody who's bought a thermal label printer and didn't love it right away. If you don't have one, get one today. But
so Cory, we got another question already. Chris is asking, are you generating the QR codes on the label maker itself?
Let's actually.
Yes. So yes. Now, remember I said we just got the one that's handheld that doesn't need to be hooked up to a computer. So I had the one before that. I have another one that does need to be hooked up to a computer so that you can make those QR codes. But here's the thing, man. Like I kind of got lost in the method. I'm like, oh, I'll use QR codes for everything. A QR code holds a lot of data. It's for like a URL or like something bigger than just the screen ID. And they require, like, not every scanner can do QR codes. So I just want to say right up front that everything you're going to see here that has a QR code can be done with a simple barcode, like the grocery store style. And yes, you can generate those right on the label makers. It's like it's like a key feature, I would say. If you're looking like label maker barcode, like, it's in the description if it can do
so
it or not, for sure.
It just might be a zebra barcode like you see on the back of a canned good at the grocery store.
Simpler, which are better
QR code.
anyway. They can be read from like further away. Like the only problem I have with my QR codes now is that they're harder to scan. Like I've been meaning to go back over there and do them with just barcodes so that they can be read from more loose angles and stuff.
For sure. So let's folks, feel free to keep adding the questions. Let's dive in, and we're gonna uncover some of this as Cory kind of pulls the sheets back on this too. So let's dive back in.
Walk us through, share your screen, walk us through the app. We'd love to see it. And if you could show us how you guys get it up and running and how you actually use it in the real world, that'd be awesome. So show us the app. We're super excited to see it.
Oh yeah, dang. So I don't have the video ready. But like I did yesterday, I just showed it from my story, and I bet it's expired now. But I kind of want to assume that most people here have seen what we're going to be talking about, right? So I can describe it, I guess. And actually, hold on, isn't it on the Printavo Instagram?
It is. I was about to say the same thing. Yep, it is.
Okay, thanks, man. We're ready. I'll just show it. So the way it works day to day, like here's the cost of it. This is the part that eats into our production, is this right here, the scanning of the QR codes. So let's just check this out. Reclaimed screens. We've got a computer right next to the reclaim booth, like a super cheap computer. I'll show you in a sec as well. This is a fancy barcode scanner just because it's wireless, but otherwise super basic. And I'm just scanning these ID numbers. Gave every frame an ID number, and it puts it into just the Google form, right? So when we submit that Google form, which I'll show you right here, this is the reclaim form. And what it actually looks like, this is the edit screen, but what it actually looks like is just this. What screens were reclaimed? We'll click into that and just start scanning. Beep, 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 beep. And it puts them all in there. It works from like 30 feet away too. It's pretty dialed. And from here, this is a Google form for those asking. It's free. Google, it's a Google product like Gmail, or I don't know, what are some other, Google search, whatever. It's like a Google, just another Google product, Google Forms. And a really neat feature it has, this is the edit screen, remember? So a really neat feature it has is that it can put all these responses onto a spreadsheet for you. If we click this link, it'll take you to the spreadsheet that I already kind of have open somewhere, but this is where it dumps that info. And you can see here on this sheet that there it is, right? So a timestamp, the list of all the screens. And I do have like a background Zapier automation that takes this string and counts how many numbers are in it and just tallies it up. I bet there's a way to do that just right here in Sheets, like with a formula, like count string or something, but I'm not much of a Sheets wizard. I just use Zapier because I kind of knew what was going on, right? So the result of that is where is it here? Is this form, right? So that's kind of the day-to-day. It's just the clicking. And you saw that video, it's like less than a minute for sure.
So real quick, just to make sure that everybody could see that, just to explain what was going on, you are simply saying, okay, I've got my cart that I have to reclaim. I'm going to grab my scanner, and every single screen had that label on the side of it that had a code. In your case, it's a QR code. You're actually arguing that honestly a standard zebra barcode would be better. But you just quickly, and you're doing it quick. I think you did like 10 there, and it took you maybe 10 seconds tops, and you scanned every single one of those. It just input that data into a form field that you had on a Google form. all you had to do was click
And that's
submit,
it.
right?
Yeah.
So you click submit, and then it's then driving and pushing this data via like pivot tables and all other stuff to this actual data studio. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah. And so Data Studio, really, a lot of people are scared off by Data Studio, I think. And the intro to Data Studio that I can give in 30 seconds is that it's like, if you've ever used spreadsheets before, you can make little graphs in the spreadsheets. What Data Studio is essentially just that, but you can plug in multiple spreadsheets. You can have like 5 spreadsheets linked and then create this table of different graphs. You can show different graphs beside each other, which is really hard to do when the spreadsheets are in different places, right? And another note I want to make about the ID numbers. So we have a mesh and inventory database. Like I use EcoFrames. So the plan, it's nice that we restretch them. So we can standardize the mesh count on that frame. When we put a 225 sticker on it or whatever, we're going to restretch that again the same way. So every screen, it benefits from having that number just from that sort of scenario to see like how many we have, where it is. But if you just want to see what you're reclaiming, what you're using, the barcode could be as simple as just the mesh count, right? And you scan the mesh counts into that form rather than have it look at the ID number to find the mesh count first, like this can really get simple. And I think that's what I want to drill home is that this is just a method. And the best thing to think about is like, what decisions am I making that I'm guessing at? And with the methods I have now, like what's the true cost of making a confident decision? Because in our case, the true cost is the form, like building this out, right? Which is, I enjoy doing it. So it's kind of like rewarding in that sense, but building this out is the cost. And then every reclaim, it's that scanning, beep, 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 beep. And yeah, do a rack of 20 in under a minute, probably faster with the proper barcodes, like I was saying, right? That's the only thing that slows it down is maybe not being able to scan it perfect sometimes, right?
Cory, let me ask you this. You have all this great data, you're collecting it, you're displaying it well. What are you using it for? So once you have that data, what actions have you implemented and what do you gain from all this collection?
Yeah, so the first one, I kind of mentioned it briefly, was deciding what mesh count to get. So when we run into problems, an indicator of a problem would be, say, you're going to shoot a screen and you don't have the mesh count that you need ready, right? So to me, I'm like, all right, well, the train of thought was, what are we going to do? Like, should we order more of them? Should we do reclaim more often? Like, I hate guessing at that stuff, right? So the way I use it is just to validate my gut instincts and to like attribute some data-driven decisions, right? And a lot of times data seems expensive and annoying to collect, and I love the idea of automating it. Like I love simple automations, and little things like this I think is huge. You could save just as much time. Maybe it's not something you were doing already, but the amount of time it would take to do this is a lot to do it manually, right? So just to automate that every time, like rather than having somebody maybe write them down or manually put them into a spreadsheet every time, right? Like after doing reclaim. So just by automating it, that's what I'm always thinking was, how can we get it going fast? And those are the decisions that it helps with. So when I look here, like here's a good question, like Matt, so you have a shop, right? How many screens do you have in your inventory right now?
Right around 60 as well.
But like, do you know? That's what I'm saying. So it's an educated guess.
I don't know.
Not discounting it at all, right? But you see what I'm saying? So I don't worry about that. I don't worry about being wrong about how many screens, because like I have been wrong before. Not saying you're wrong now, right? But I hate the idea of just like ordering more than I need, and I've done it before, right? So just something like that.
This actually leads into that the Paul Akers thing too, right? The 2 second lean. So a bit, and correct me if I'm wrong, Cory, but what you're attaining here is you're getting the ability to actually know exactly, one, how many screens you have, which clearly, sure, someone could say you can just count that and have the answer. You're correct, you could. But you're also actually collecting data of how frequently am I reclaiming a 230? How frequently am I reclaiming a 156? How frequently am I reclaiming a 110? And now you're actually able to capture that data to figure out, okay, the percentage of reclaim is X for this, X for this, X for this. And now you can then correlate that to saying, okay, well, that's the actual amount that I need to have in inventory.
Yeah.
Then I need to match the same amount of my inventory with that. And that the 2-second lean, that really breaks down in the cabinet shop, right? They're trying to avoid having more overhead than they need, because overhead is time and money and space, right? It all adds up. So taking these steps is to determine, okay, based off of what I'm reclaiming, that tells me how much I'm actually using those screens. I can match my inventory to the demand, which means now you can have less screen, less waste. For you, it might be different if someone's got like a local screen stretcher that gives them a great discount, right? I have that locally, so I might not be as, but it's still, I don't know. You're right. I actually couldn't tell you right now. I can give you a gut of like, oh yeah, I'd say probably 40% of our screens are 230s, right? But I don't know. I don't actually know. And like, I'd feel a lot more confident if I did know.
If I was going to give you 10 screens right now, like what mesh count would you choose? And how would you come to that conclusion? Like if you're getting 10 screens, because for me, again, I don't want to put you on the spot, right? It's just because you have a shop so you can relate. But for me, I'm like, okay, yeah, well, maybe like a week ago, we ran out of 160s, or like, man, it feels like we've been popping lots of 160s lately, or it always was just my educated guess. I wasn't wrong all the time, but I can say that we don't really have the problem where you go in and there's like not enough screens, or it's.
Well, you said too. You said I feel like we have ... right? That's the first way you know you're probably wrong, right? If you're making decisions off of feelings as opposed to data, it's a good chance it's skewed by human aspects, right?
And so does it matter?
So I think you nailed it.
It's like, does it matter to have, say, like 90 screens instead of 60, or to have 60 instead of 40? I could maybe have less. It's like, not really, but you brought it up. You're like, oh, you could just count it, right? And I think that too. It's like, that's what I would like to drive home today is I did count it, but thought about how to like keep it counted. It's counted forever. And it's something that, so it's not just like, a good way to say it is, so you could sort your screens, but to standardize them is a little different. And that's like a big lean concept is the 3S, like the shine, sort, and standardize. A lot of people clean, or a lot of people even think that I like cleaning. We have a clean shop. I hate it. It's all about standardizing, because that's what makes things stay clean. So just by knowing the count, it doesn't cost anything. It actually costs exactly what it would cost Matt to know it, which is to count it, except I put it into a spreadsheet while I was doing it. And now it's there forever, right? And that's kind of it. And if something changes, right? But if we were setting them out for restretch like you are, it'd be the same thing. We kind of touched on that too, right? Like, so I'd said that we will restretch the same mesh on the frame every time, but you don't necessarily have to. But how do you decide whether to reassign it or not, right? And so to kind of tie it back to the question, what decisions do we make on it? That's it. It's like, I use it more so when a problem comes. I don't like go to this form and think, all right, what are we going to do? I think more like, if Sam says he can't do a job because he didn't have any 160s, then I think like, dang, should we have a deeper inventory of those? And the only I can, if I had the foresight to start logging that information in like any way, the sooner I had done that, the more confident I can make that decision. So that's like where my ADD maybe kicks in a little bit, is like, I can't get an idea out like this out of my head, because the sooner, like the longer I wait to start to count the screens, then the less time I'm gaining from it. And that's a lean principle too, right? Take action today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that people also get stuck up on, okay, well, I see there's a benefit, but is it enough benefit to do this? Well, I would argue that until you start doing these small things to get forward momentum, you're never going to be a data-driven shop or data-driven person, right? So it's you're going to always push things off because, oh, it's a slight help, but I don't see the full benefit. Well, the benefit comes when you've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 things that are slight helps, and now all of a sudden you've cleared off a whole bunch of tasks from your plate. You're more efficient, you're more effective, you're leaner, you're not having wasted inventory, you're not spending more time, right? So all these things add up quickly to really bring a lot of benefit to it. Which I think is a really important thing that more people got to look at.
Really quick, guys, Cory, you kind of hit on this. I'm curious, what keeps you checking this page? How often do you check it? And when you check it, what are you looking for?
So when I look at this, so lately I decided I was going to help out in Reclaim. And part of that decision was like, how often is Sam doing it? And so I looked and noticed, like, even here, you can see there's kind of a gap. This, I think, is from the form maybe being broken. It's like, that looks like a way, there's no way we didn't do Reclaim for 2 weeks and only use 24 screens. Like, the form must have been, we had a problem with the computer. But when I go look at this, it's for that type of stuff. Like, it's like, I ask myself a question and I have this resource that I can go to and be like, that form can answer it. And there's a couple things on here, but we're not checking it like on a time period. It's more kind of like Kanban. It's more like push and pull. So instead of like checking this every week or whatever, I use some sort of indicator to pull me into it, which would be, like we said, like not having a mesh count available for a job that needs to be shot. If we're like popping a ton of screens, like if I see a lot of screens, if I see some popped screens, that might trigger me to look and be like, are these guys actually, man, it's management, I think, is actually a big part of it, because it's easy to like roast people for stuff and you be wrong about it. I feel like you're popping lots of screens lately, but are you? Because you might actually be trending like the right direction and now you're just shitting on some guy. Like, I worked in the graphics industry and that was like something I could use to show that I was doing a good job. Is like, hey, look, we're getting more impressions, more jobs out of these screens now. Like, and now I'm stretching screens less and ordering screens less.
And again, I feel like ... If you're ever going to outright say that, I always tell people like, hey, double think about what you're about to say, because if you're starting a sentence with I feel like, it's already got open doors for arguments and error. Right? You should always try to go with data. If I feel something, right? That tells me I'm going to go look for data. Of course,
like, you can't measure everything, and that's like what I want to show is we're not like doing Reclaim and then sitting down to figure this out. You know what I'm saying? It's like, just want to keep it simple. It started simple. It started as a paper binder, right? It started really simple, where when a job popped, we would look at the sheet for that job, and we used to stamp it with a date stamp, a physical date stamp. So every time you do Reclaim, you go through this binder, screen 24, date stamp, screen 25, date stamp, screen 30, date stamp. And when it popped, you'd look at it and you could see how old it was and how many jobs were on it. And that'll tell you if someone in Reclaim is like doing the most or doing the least, really, right? Like, you can see those trends. But sometimes they pop because they're old. Like, sometimes a screen pops and it's like, wow, that's amazing. It had 70 jobs on it. And you're like stoked that it broke because A, it's out of production now. It clearly was ready. And B, you're like trending upwards. But if you're measuring that, yeah, that's a lean thing, right? Like, a standard is just a baseline to improve upon. And if you're not measuring it, then you don't really have that baseline. That makes sense?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Awesome. Now, we did have a question that I'll circle back on in a little bit. Our friends over in Tulsa, May, she was curious if she could see what you're talking about with your Kanban for your ink supplies that we mentioned, but we can do that at the end of the chat if there's some time. So Nick, go ahead.
Yeah. Then we skirted around this. We talked about it a little bit. What peripherals do you have? We talked about the scanner, we talked about the label, but the other day you told Matt and I, there's a Raspberry Pi computer.
The computer,
yeah. And as a nerd, I got really excited about that. So tell us more and tell us what actual physical equipment you need to get this accomplished.
So,
and talk to us like we don't know this stuff too. Like, talk to us like the most simple level, because a lot of folks. A Raspberry Pi for a lot of folks are like, what? That's a computer? I thought it was a Pi.
Yeah, I had no idea. So, and they just came out with this new one, which is even cooler. So I use these a couple places in the shop. I don't know how I got into these little computers, but what a Raspberry Pi is a really cheap, let me look at not the keyboard one to get a better idea. So it's a really cheap computer kit. I think it's meant to introduce people to computer programming, but there's lots and lots of projects that have spawned from it. It is, I think it's an English company who like bound together to mass produce this board because there was a lack of quality of like decent, cheap, like just a cheap computer. I just need a cheap computer. I don't want to hook up 100 things to it. So they put out these things. You can see it's got like an Ethernet jack, headphone, it's got HDMI, little micro SD card, USB slots. And if we look at a kit here, so here's like a project kit with modules for different sensors. I could probably get like with a 10-year-old kid, you could probably show them how to program like a switch and a button and lights and how to hook it all up and how computer systems work. So anyway, I don't do any of that crap. What I use them for is just like a cheap, crappy little computer. In the case of the darkroom, literally all it does is that it has a Chrome browser on it that does the Google form that we showed, the Reclaim form. And then the rest of the day it shows we have like a home automation setup in the shop. So the rest of the day it shows the darkroom panel, which is this stuff here. This is a whole nother thing we could go into, obviously another day. But this runs on a Raspberry Pi too. It's just a mini computer running the home automation software that will take like all the Apple Wi-Fi devices and all these devices and all these smart plugs and all these sensors and tie them all together. And that's all that computer does. It shows this page, shows the form, and that's it. We use them also. I just set one up for our security cameras. It's like a web browser that just shows the security cameras all day. So we have a couple of them around the shop. And they just released this one, which is a lot better. It's just all built into this little keyboard. See that?
That's awesome. So folks, we've already talked about this with Cory. We're gonna probably have Cory on at least quarterly, if not more frequently. Do a quarterly Cory.
These things are cool, man. Everyone talks about the station, right?
Apps, and I think this is the kind of stuff that like I personally love to nerd out about. It looks like Chris Hogg in the chat's also super stoked that we're nerding out about this. This is the kind of stuff that's more dashboard, more database, more data, and understanding this kind of stuff is something that I think we're all super stoked about, and we definitely want to continue on. So taking back from that, so we have a label maker, right? Or some sort of ways of applying labels and a barcode or a QR code.
It's like $30.
That scanner. Right? Yep, scanner, which doesn't have to be wireless. You can go with a cheap one and stay cheap too. And then you got a Raspberry Pi, which you could use a computer you have locally if you don't want to buy the Raspberry Pi as well.
My production guy, I don't know what happened. I don't think he knew. Oops, my bad. Sorry. I don't think he knew that it was wireless for a long time. It's like you plug it in to charge it with like a USB cable, and he used it wired for like must have been weeks, man, before I saw it laying there, and I'm like, why is it out of the chart? Like it's out of the charger spot, but it's plugged in. Like, man, maybe someone's using it plugged in. So yeah, you definitely don't need a wireless one. Like even you would be fine just without one. Sam proved it, even though he had one the whole time. I don't know what he was doing. And that's it, right?
All right, so say you've got a computer laying around that you're fine with putting there. So we just use that. So you're talking about $30. You're at $60 now, roughly, right? $60 and then some time. Now from there, pretty much everyone's got a G Suite. It's free. So you've got the Google Forms for free, and then you've got your database, your Data Studio. One question that Chris had is, are you just using a stock Data Studio template, or is that one you had to pay for? Is that part of the cost you had there too?
Oh no, I don't know anything about paid templates on Google Data Studio, so I'm gonna like kind of open it up while I talk about it. But data for me,
there might not be. I assume there was. There might not be.
Oh no, yeah. So these are just straight up like. I guess I would. So no, I didn't use like one of these, like this example search console report. You can open this up and you can use it as a template. And I think it's because like it might not look it, but that this report is like a little simpler. It's not simpler, but it's simpler than that search console. That's for sure, because it's tying together only like 3 or 4 data points, where some of those templates are built to really really help you. Like you could build this from scratch. I'm saying, I'm not just trying to like be patronizing or whatever. I'm saying like those templates are friggin' complicated. They're for complicated, like way more complicated problems than this. So let me show you just a little bit of what's going on here, just to dive in quick. So this is the edit screen. If I click any one of these charts, I believe is what they're called, then you're just picking these settings here. The data source is the spreadsheet it's coming from. The dimension is like main thing that you want to split the data by. So in this case, we want to know about mesh counts. Like I want to know about the 225 mesh count. And what's the metric we're measuring for 225 mesh counts is the total count of them. All right. So the data here is, it's the spreadsheet. It's the column of mesh counts from the spreadsheet I just showed. And this is the same data point, except you can choose to aggregate it. In this case, it's doing it automatically as a record count. It's counting them, but you could add another field for the average amount of screens per mesh, for example. And it's pretty easy. Like I only just started using it for this type of stuff. And if I click around, I can kind of make it look different ways. Like not every data set works with every type of chart, right? Like some bar charts don't make good pie charts, but could like add a little heat map there. What are some other ways to do it? Well, yeah, you could show it as a bar chart. Like see what I mean? Like it's relatively, I thought at least, like this, I've been looking for a product like this for a long time, a way to show stuff, but more than one thing.
You're making it look so simple too.
And
so
like,
I mean, the first one is start gathering the data.
That's
right.
It. That's where it started for me. I had the spreadsheet, and I used to just look at the spreadsheet. You know what I mean? Like for different things, could show a little more. Let me show a little more of what Data Studio has going on here. Because we talked about like reasons to come back later or whatever, but I can show you. So we won't dive into this, but I can show you just the type of charts that I'm making. And it really is just, look, sometimes they break. But really it's just like, I'm just trying to show the number of jobs that are getting done. This is art separations. So how many jobs are being set to the art needs art status, and then how many jobs are being set to the art done status versus art rejected status, and how many they're doing a week, right? Oh, look at that volume we're getting now. Had trouble getting some orders in. Now we've done some new training and they're doing a shit ton more jobs a week. So this is what I use it for, is just like to take a spreadsheet and make a little table of it. But it really starts with like gathering the data. And I'm super sensitive to stuff that's like it's non-value, like you said, right? Like entering the data is annoying. No one likes to do that. It's why I don't know really how long jobs take, because no one wants to like start a timer and then you forget to end the timer. And then you don't trust your stats because that one time you like forgot to set the timer for you let the timer run for 20 minutes one time when you're doing reclaim, and now you don't trust like any of your data. I'm just looking for simple, right? Like what can we measure? I'm trying to measure everything I can measure automatically, pretty much, and then figuring out what to do with it later. So if I think of I can measure that, here's a way I can measure that, then I'm putting it in. It started with this. How many screens are we reclaiming? Because that tells you a lot. It tells you a lot about like just your volume. Like how about screens you're using versus jobs to get like an average number of screens per job, like, and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're saying, oh, a setup should take 10 minutes. Well, not if most of your jobs are 4 or more screens and stuff like that. Or, hey, our setup times went up recently and we were able to look and see like, well, yeah, we're using way more screens now. We started using 2 white screens all the time. So yeah, we're using more screens now. So our average setup time would go up, wouldn't it? It's not because Sam is like slowing down, like, right? It's not like because his stand, like anything's
But you
happening.
can also, I mean, I'm sure Sam's not slowing down, but I'm sure someone out there has an employee who is slowing down, and you don't have to go in that conversation saying, well, I feel like they're going slower, right? You can actually go and go, this person's going slower, and here's the data to support it. And it's measuring all that data can be used in a lot of very good ways. And again, it keeps you from having to go with a gut feeling and actually see what's actually happening in your business.
So I'm not like, can you mind me asking, how many employees do you have? Because I'm not really like a big manager. Like I would not consider myself good at it.
I don't. It's like a 2.5 man shop here, and we're all partners of it. We're friends for like 15 years, and
it's almost like cheating almost in terms of hiring. Like, look at all that help you have that you didn't have to hire, and they're all invested the same way you are. That's definitely. So the point I was trying to make though is that the only thing I would say not to use it for like disciplinary purposes. I really try not to use it for anything like that. Remember, it's a baseline to improve from. It's like if they say like, no, I haven't, you'd be like, that's where I have pulled it out before. I'd be like, no, well, like, I'm not just like guessing, that I like look at this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, can you tell me am I missing something? Can you tell me where the data is wrong? But for the most part, I think I try and frame it around, it's for them to see where the struggle is. It's not for them to do more jobs a day or to reclaim more in less time or this or that. It's kind of more so to get them motivated about making it better, right? To get them to see the standard and get them to measure it. Like, people want to do a good job, and it's really hard to tell sometimes if you are. And saying like good job from your boss doesn't always help people. But yeah, I really try to avoid like, hey, that would be maybe taking the data too seriously, maybe like too much. Like, I want to look at all the other reasons why that setup time is longer. Like, use it to work together, right? I guess that's it. And like I said, not a big manager, but like, yeah, I always check myself when I'm thinking like, oh, these stats are down. I should talk to them about why I should see what's going on. But what's going on is like a lack of training, a lack of resources, a lack of process. It's like something I need to take care of, right? So I really try not to hold them to it.
Okay, Cory, I got a big picture question for you here.
Let's do it.
So a lot of people are getting excited in the comments. A lot of people want to start doing it. It sounds like the easiest way is to number your screens and start putting that information in a spreadsheet. You could use a form if you want, but you've developed it further. So I'm wondering, where are you going to take this at? What's your next step for it? So to rephrase that question, do you think people could start by simply writing it in the spreadsheet? And then what are you thinking about to actually take it further?
Yeah, so my first step was making the data entry really, really easy, right? So we did the QR code scanner, and that's what resulted in kind of this new like digital spreadsheet. So my next step is, we didn't show the separate form because there's a couple other things on that dashboard. One of them was broken screens, and that's its own form right here, where you put in the screen number 12 and it was a freak accident. We decided we need to put a note next to freak accident because they're all freak accidents, and it'd be nice to have a better description. So you fill that in. So what I would like to do next is combine the broken screen form with the reclaim form. And the plan I had for that was every time a screen is reclaimed, I kind of had it started, but it broke. So check this out. It's on here. So what I wanted to do next was every time the screens, well, it kind of works. So let me show the bottom of this. Every time we run that report, it would take, this is how it pulls the mesh counts in. Remember I said I have a separate automation to count them every time? This is kind of like the beta of what's next. So on the 21st, these are the 24 screens that we did. And it took that form and it busted them out all into their own line items so that I could use the data a little differently. And the real interesting thing that I want it to do is look at this date of last pop. So I haven't implemented it yet, but I want it to look up on the broken screen form responses. What's the date stamp of the last time that screen was popped? And then Well, I guess when the screen pops, you would reset the tally to 0, because the next time that
So you're
ID
getting
goes to
you're getting
reclaim,
a lifespan per screen then
yeah,
too.
because right now we don't really know how many jobs it had before it popped. And remember, I had that with the basic data system, with the basic stamp system. So I really miss having that. And that's how I'd have to do it. So when a screen breaks, you reset the tally to 0, because the next time it goes through reclaim would be its first time going through. And then you would just, I think I was just going to put that on here.
So Alex
database.
in the questions has said something too that I think is, and I love that. I think that the screen cycle life is genius, Cory. That to me would seem like the natural next step for sure. Another one that Alex is bringing up that I know I mentioned as well the other day is tension, right? So is there any thoughts of, or have you put any thought into any tension tracking, or saying like, hey, this has been reclaimed 10 times, time for a tension check, or this has been reclaimed 15 times, time for a tension check, or anything like that?
Yeah. That's a good example, like we were talking about, of collecting data that you may. So I don't have a problem where I want to see tension over time, like where it starts and where it ends, because that is kind of a standard. You expect that to be the same, and you can tell, I think, in different ways. Like, so we do measure tension, but we'll just, like, why are you measuring tension? It's because I want to put tight screens together on multicolored jobs. So really all we're doing is marking the low tension screens. Once it's below a certain threshold, in our case, I think 21 newtons, put that low tension label on it, and it'll get peeled off the next time it gets restretched. And that just means not to use it on a multi-job, basically. And so I'm not too worried about, like, I do care, but not enough to measure it. You know what I mean? Like, I know that the eco frames come in, I should expect them to be around X. I don't know what it is. It's written down somewhere. I don't try to remember it. I should expect them to be around this. And when we reject them, when they're old, they should settle to like this, right? And when they're settled, that number is above our low tension thing. So that whole range of new to settled is good. And then we'll mark them when they're low. So I'm not really concerned about how long that takes, because the dates are not really relevant. You know, if it took only 2 days, but it was a 20,000 piece job, then that doesn't mean it was any better of a screen than one that lasted for 6 weeks and 10 jobs, and it was like not discharge anchor, something crazy like that, right? So that's one that I wasn't super thinking about, was tension over time, but I really want to do total jobs between each time it's reported broken, because I think that will be that's a good indicator, right? Like, I have some screens I wonder about all the time. I'm like, it has the way we used to tape screens the old way, right? How you have stuff in your shop from like 2 processes ago. I have screens that are so stained, I just wish I knew how old they are.
Right.
They're ancient, and I'm just like proud of them. But like, you don't want to retire it early, but I would cut a screen out if it's like, you know, we hit 50 jobs, it's stained to shit, even though it's still good tension, like, it's ready, right? It's like profitable.
It's lived its life. It is, the
A
ROI is there.
dignified
It's
life.
time to move on.
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
You put it
So
out
that's what's next.
onto a boat, into the river, and then you shoot a bow and arrow into it and let it on fire, and you just give it the proper end of life that it's deserved.
The whole skid of aluminum frames. So that's kind of the next thing, is getting the full report, like the individual life of each frame. Because right now all we know is what's in the shop, what's being used, but we don't really know much about the life of that screen anymore, until at least I've fixed this zap, just kind of working, everything except for the finding the mesh count thing, right? It's almost done.
Love it.
Amazing.
Cool.
Okay, well, we got this one. We got a little time left before we're done. Cory, can you show us that Kanban board for your ink?
Yeah, so
do you mind?
Yeah, no, I don't mind at all. It's like, it's straight from FastCap. I'm just looking around. I'm trying to think what's the closest Kanban card to me so I can run and get it. I'll be right back. Give me 1 second.
Cool. Do you think? And everybody else, if you have any questions for Cory in the last couple of minutes too, please feel free to ask us. Chris, I'll see if I can find out which of those barcode scanners. I believe he's got the wireless one, but we'll find out here in a second. Any other questions? Feel free to throw them in before we close up here in a couple minutes, folks. All right.
While we
Cory's
wait,
coming
Matt, I
back.
got one.
Guys, is my audio still good? It kicked me off because
Yeah, you're good.
I went too far with my AirPod. Okay, so I'm back. This is just straight from FastCap. Let me just I'll show it on the cam and kind of narrate. So Kanban, I think Kanban just means, wow, what does Kanban actually mean? It's a Japanese word. I think it means push-pull. Kanban. I don't know. Oh, it means signboard. It means sign, like road sign. So that's actually my favorite analogy for Kanban. We talked about it yesterday. It's like a road sign. You want to, if I'm going down the road and I need Sharpies, right? Like there's a point on that road where I need to like exit and buy Sharpies or else I'm going to run out of Sharpies. Like you need to hit the gas station, right? And so you need a sign. If there's no sign, then how are you going to know that there's even a gas station there? And so what you need is Kanban. You need a signboard. That's like, that's what the word literally friggin' means in Japanese. So this is a FastCap one. I really want to redo them, but all it is like it says just what it is. The minimum quantity that we want. This is the Kanban where we want to reorder them, and where they go to art output. On the back, I had made like a quick QR code link to the Amazon page so you can buy them. That's just me like being fancy, but it could just say Amazon, right? 12 pack of Sharpies. That's what we're getting. So the way this works is if you're in here pulling Sharpies out, typically fancy people have 2 bins, and a good way to do it would be to like wrap these in a rubber band, so you can't get the 3 of them without touching the card. And what you do with this card is you take it to the person who does the purchasing, which would be me. And I'm like, all right, I'll order some Sharpies, and I take the card to shipping. So when you run out, you bring this road sign to the shipping person, and I bring it to the receiving. And what the info it gives me, it tells me what to order and how many and from where. And then when it goes into shipping or receiving or whatever, it just says art output, but it tells that person where to go restock them. It also tells them where to put this card. That's the minimum level, 3. So in this case, in this box, what it should be more like is, I'll tilt it down again. It should be more like these 3 markers are here, and then like that, and then like that. And that's how like I would set this for us. So you'd be going down there.
So how would you do that for ink more specifically?
Same thing. So either I saw somebody post like, oh, we just keep 2 gallons. And when you when you open the next gallon, you do that.
Reorder.
In our case, I don't know if we have the example anymore, but I just train like 20%. Like imagine a red line around the bottom of this container, and they have the same thing. All of our ink has the Kanban on it and stuff. And I got to say, this is one of the things that I would implement. Like we don't run out of stuff. Let me put it that way. And if I went and I didn't have any Sharpies, I would just increase that minimum of 3 to 10 to give it enough time to replenish before running out. I'd move the sign further up the road, right? When we have 10 instead of 3, when we're like not as close to the refill point, and that's it. Like and someone just said, I was not expecting it to be a physical system. I love it. So the first time I saw this, I tried to make a Trello board like an idiot, man. Like this is it. This is what you need. Bring this to the guy's desk, the little card, and I type it into Amazon, I order it, and I bring it to shipping, and then they put it away. And if we want something to stay, we make the card for it, and that's it. You just don't run out of stuff. It's great. Like it's really wicked. And all credit to like, this is the Toyota production system. These are specifically like a FastCap template. I'm trying to pull out. I just set the box all nice. I'm trying to rip it open. This is like a FastCap template. I printed it, laminated it, and just used it. Now that we've used it a while, I realize I don't care to write the date that everything came in. I don't care how often we ordered Sharpies. I literally don't. If we run out, I'm going to increase the Kanban. That's it. And if it seems like we have a lot, I'm going to decrease the Kanban. That's pretty much it. And it's just literally moving that sign up and down the road. And yeah, honestly, like We're not running out of stuff. It's so weird.
Simple and effective.
We don't think about it. It's like, oh yeah, used to have to like ask at the meeting, anybody need any? Oh yeah, remind me about that ink you need or whatever the heck it is, right? If you want it, like we have blank Kanban cards, you like make a card and bring it. That's how you would request to buy something. It's like, you want it in stock, then make a card and go bring it to purchasing, and then it'll be in stock forever. Like it can't. Yeah, it's weird. They don't run out.
Awesome. All right. Well, before we close up here, folks, we're already going a little bit long. I got a couple people saying, how can I access your Data Studio and Excel template? I'd love to have access to it. So we got to be careful until we give access to your actual data because it'll get it all janked up. But is that something that you're able to share, Cory, and are you willing to?
Okay, so it's like I looked at this before and I made like, I was trying to put the links in here, right? So I did the links to the Amazon store, the referral links or whatever, so everyone could see the QR code and that. And when I went through the spreadsheet, so you can't really share a form with anybody. And since it's the form
because it's too customized, yeah.
Well, I just don't think you can share it as like a template. Like I couldn't figure out how to make a form template to send to people. And then the problem then is the master spreadsheet is automatically generated by that form, right?
Right.
So I do have this here and I enabled sharing, but I want a preface for the chat that when I drop this in, you can pull this out. Like you can use this, you can copy it to your thing. You can use this exact same setup, but when you're making the Google form, you're gonna have to, I need to see an edit screen. When you're making the form, you're gonna have to choose manually where to put the info if you want to use my spreadsheet as a template. Are you following that?
Cool. Yep. So that makes sense. And I'm joining in, and I'm seeing we got a handful of people. I just joined into that spreadsheet. It looks like they got a couple folks already popping in there looking at it too.
All right. So you'd have to be on here, and you could. It's under here, I think. Select response destination. You could select an existing one. You can create your own. And you saw how I have two. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I didn't notice my screen was not on. But you can have two forms going into one spreadsheet, which is kind of what I have set up. And again, it's just under here. Select response destination. And hook it up to whatever spreadsheet you want. So you could definitely use that one as like a template of of what data to collect and where to put it. And you know what? Honestly, you could take this spreadsheet and use it without the form like we talked about. You could use it without any of that. Because if you do have one of these Raspberry Pis, if you have a computer or whatever at the Reclaim, and you even just typing those in manually, looking at the screen rack, it wouldn't take that long, right? Like, okay, the QR scanner cuts it in half, but we're talking like 3 minutes to a minute and a half. And it's just like me spending Amazon credit that we have and thinking like, oh yeah, like we just want to use it. It's not necessary at all. And that's one of the most common questions I get is, what kind of QR code scanner is that? It's like, they're so basic. They're just little weird keyboard generators, and there's not really much to it. And I would start manually, and that will show you what you can collect with the scanner and how to make it easier. Like what your biggest costs are. What's your biggest data collection cost? Is it even worth the scanner, right?
Right. Love it. Awesome.
So much.
Very cool. Cory, yeah, I want to thank you so much. I mean, I know there's a lot of people in the chats here that are nerding out about this too. It's fun seeing somebody be innovative and like push boundaries and figure out how to make themselves more effective and efficient and go lean. I mean, I know this wasn't really about lean, but I definitely want to recommend everybody that if you haven't read 2 Second Lean, I haven't finished it yet, but it's already amazing. So definitely check that out. Make sure to follow Cory. It's just Floodway Print Co. On I believe that's it on Instagram, right? Definitely follow Cory if you haven't been already. I don't know where you've been under a rock because he's all over the place. So definitely follow him.
10K
Thank you.
So I can get the links. That's like it. I'm gonna plug it hard. Like we're so close. I wish I could have linked.
Everybody, go follow him. Go follow him so he can do this slide up to get more links going. Thank you so much, everybody that participated too. Thank you so much for your questions and for joining in. We appreciate y'all.
I just wanted to mention the the links, like the Amazon links again too. That's like should clear up too. Like there's no compensation today, whatever. But if you do go to those links and look at the barcode readers and stuff, that is super easy way to just support this whole idea. Like I love this. I said it's my pleasure. I love giving back to the community like this because typically you have to pay people to tell you stuff and whatever. But like that's it. That's my little way to automate that. So think about that. It's like I took this time to set this up in the beginning, and it's a no cost way to make things better. Like why not? You know what I mean? So have a look through those and yeah, let me know. But like we said, you can get started with nothing, just a spreadsheet. So have a look and holler with any questions, right?
Awesome. Well, let's do it, folks. I would love to hear about people who implement Cory's system. Shoot us an email. If you have any questions about Printavo at all, you can always email us. Just email me, nick@printavo.com. You're going to find this on YouTube. If you want to watch it again, and I'm sure you do, this is a real data-specific one, so find that recap on YouTube. And then we got another one coming up in 2 weeks. Matt, I totally forgot what the topic is. Who do we got coming up next?
We've got Matthew Richardson. He's going to come in and we're going to talk all things embroidery.
Nice.
So Relentless Merch in Nebraska. He's going to be a fantastic one. We haven't talked about embroidery too much. So all things stitched coming up in 2 weeks. And we're going to definitely have Cory on as often as he's going to allow us to steal his time. So I'd say keep an eye out. We're going to have to do at least the quarterly Cory check-ins and talk more data and see what other fun, amazing things he's getting his head wrapped around and share it with the industry. So again, folks, thank you so much for joining. Cory, absolute pleasure. Great actually chatting with you, not just DMing back and forth. Great talking with you.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks so much, folks.
Bye-bye.